Understanding Iran from freedom of religion to systematic oppression. My name is Natalie Sanandaji, and I'm honored to be your moderator for today's discussion. This webinar is part of a series hosted by the Iranian Coalition, a network dedicated to exposing the crimes of the Ayatollah regime, amplifying the voices of the Iranian people, and strengthening the ties between Jews and Iranians. We have a powerful group of speakers with us today, each offering a unique perspective on the ongoing struggles in Iran. Thank you for joining us, and I look forward to an insightful conversation. I'm honored to introduce our first speaker, an incredible advocate, Jacqueline Saper. Jacqueline was born in Tehran to an Iranian father and a British mother, and she witnessed firsthand the seismic changes of the 1979 Iranian Revolution. Her memoir, From Miniskirt to Hijab, A Girl in Revolutionary Iran, chronicles her journey from a young woman enjoying cultural freedom to being forced to adhere to oppressive laws. Today, Jacqueline is a powerful advocate for women's rights and personal resilience, bringing a deeply personal perspective to our discussion. Jacqueline, you've experienced a dramatic shift from cultural freedom to forced conformity. How did this affect your views of freedom and personal rights, especially for women in Iran?
Hi, Natalie. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here today. This is an excellent question, one that has shaped my life and my advocacy. My personal journey from miniskirt to hijab, which, as you mentioned, is the title of my book, taught me that freedom is never guaranteed. I have lived through the transition from a time of cultural openness to an era of strict state-imposed conformity. While I have come to see freedom, not just for women, but for all individuals, as something both fragile and essential. Before the 1979 revolution, as you mentioned, I grew up in Iran where women had choices. We had the right to dress as we pleased, pursue higher education in any field we liked, and participate in society without government interference. Ayatollah Khomeini returned to Iran on February 1st of 1979. Recently, it was the anniversary. His first decree for women to wear veils came on March 8, 1979, which ironically was the International Women's Day. And I was a senior in high school on that day, a few weeks shy of turning 18. From that day of the decree, women started opposing the restrictions placed upon them. And because my school was across the University of Tehran, the epicenter of the revolution, I did not participate, but many of my classmates went to participate in those protests against the mandatory veiling. I watched the protests from the window of my third floor classroom. And soon after, very soon, about 2 hours, my friends ran back to the school with horrified looks because some had been attacked and some had been verbally assaulted. And of course, we know it took about a year, but the veil laws became mandatory, especially by the force of the morality police in Iran. As I mentioned, freedom is not just about a personal expression, it's about dignity and autonomy. When the government mandates what women can or cannot wear, where they can or cannot go, what field they can or cannot study, they are turning them into second-class citizens. That is why I admire the movements Zan Zendegi Azadi, Women Life Freedom, after the event of September 2022 with Mahsa Amini. And I think that I admire these brave Iranian women, but I believe they're not just fighting for their own freedom, but it's about human rights and women in general all over the world, because freedom is very fragile and it can regress anytime.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline. Thank you for all of your personal insights. It's scary to think, you're so used to one way of life, and suddenly someone comes into the place where you call home and changes everything from under you. And we hope one day to see a free Iran again.
Thank you.
Next up, we have our next speaker, Kersi Bishraf. Kersi is an attorney specializing in international and comparative law, with a particular focus on the history and culture of Zoroastrianism and the Persian world. Born in India, Pakistan, Kersi is a passionate advocate for the preservation and ancient cultures and has volunteered at various archaeological sites along the Silk Road. He has contributed to forthcoming book, The Zoroastrian World, and has given talks and published articles on the subject. As an expert in Zoroastrianism history and a passionate advocate for ancient cultures, Kersi, how do you see the systematic oppression of religious minorities, including Zoroastrians, playing out in modern day Iran?
Thank you, Natalie. And thank you all for allowing to participate in this exceptional panel. The Zoroastrians in Iran are the longest suffering minority subject to the discriminatory laws of the Republic of Iran. Although they are protected under the Constitution, the laws in practice work in such ways that the Zoroastrians are deprived of their land, the Zoroastrians are discriminated against, attaining high positions in government, in the military, and they're also subject to religious laws, like they cannot establish new places of worship. Their places of worship are governed by the government itself, so which then the government becomes the owner of the property in a sense, and certain restrictions are placed in that regard. So let me give you a broad picture of the constitutional position in Iran. And the Islamic Republic of Iran is an Islamic theocracy. Its constitution and laws emphasize the dominance of Islam and the Muslims in public life. Converting from Islam is considered apostasy, resulting in severe punishment, including the death penalty. Religious minorities that are recognized in the Constitution are granted certain codified rights, but non-Muslims are prohibited from marrying Muslim women, inheriting from Muslims, and cannot receive equal retribution with Muslims for crimes committed against them. Religious minorities, as I said, cannot take senior governmental positions, become judges, or take up military or public managerial positions. Islamic jurisprudence, as interpreted by Iranian jurists, considers non-Muslims as unbelievers, and under a presumption of superiority in religious faith, invalidates the civil rights of minorities who can be discriminated against in matters of inheritance, financial retribution, and blood money, called diya. Although the Iranian constitution guarantees equality before the law for everyone, this equality is subject to conformity with Islamic criteria. The official religion of Iran is Islam and the school of Shia Islamic jurisprudence. A provision in the constitution makes Muslims duty-bound to treat non-Muslims in conformity with the norms and principles of Islamic justice and equity. But this principle applies to all who refrain from engaging in conspiracy or activity against Islam and the Islamic Penal Code. So a couple of examples in the Penal Code, there is a provision which says unauthorized premarital sex by a non-Muslim with a Muslim man, a Muslim woman, is punishable by death. While non-Muslims are allowed to consume alcohol on their private property, if they appear in public drunk, then they are subject to severe punishment. There's a law against blasphemy, whereas the freedom of expression, where the freedom of expression must conform to Islamic criteria. insulting sacred religious values or Prophet Muhammad are potentially punishable sentences ranging from imprisonment to the death penalty. Now, coming to some specific examples of the treatment, particularly of Zoroastrians, in 2020, a Zoroastrian priest was killed, and the state never made any efforts to find the culprits and punish them. The Iranians face, Zoroastrians face discrimination with regard to educational and employment opportunities. The assassination of the Zoroastrian cleric was in Kerman, and although it sparked huge riots and a debate about the rights of religious minorities, nothing was done about it. There is a provision in the code called Dia and Kisas, which relate to the value of the human body, and non-Muslims are considered lower in terms of their rights. If a Muslim kills a non-Muslim, even intentionally, there is no death penalty for that. And so a representative of the Zoroastrian community in the Iranian parliament, minorities that are recognized in the constitution are allowed membership in the Majlis, the Iranian parliament. But so one of the representatives complained that one of the major celebrations of an Iranian festival called Sadeh was attacked by elders and nothing was done about that. And so it often leads to the Basij force, the police force, to harass and persecute followers of religious minorities, including Zoroastrians. So I can go on, but for the present purposes, I've laid the framework of great discrimination and even persecution of non-minorities on minorities in the Iranian constitutional and legal picture. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kersi. Thank you for all of your insights into what is considered now legal in Iran. And of course, we know that even before these were actual laws and were considered legal, that people were still carrying out these hateful crimes against other minorities. It was still considered almost a norm before it was technically legal. And that's very unfortunate that we know that it's been happening for many years before the revolution started. But hopefully someday in our lifetime, we will see a change in those laws. And next up, we have our next speaker, Juliana Teimourazi. Juliana is a two-time Nobel Peace Prize nominee, human rights advocate, and author. She's the founder of the Iraqi Christian Relief Council, which provides humanitarian aid to persecuted Assyrian Christians and other Middle Eastern minorities. Juliana has been a vocal advocate for interfaith unity, especially through her initiatives, Assyrians Against Anti-Semitism. Her advocacy work also includes traveling to Israel for humanitarian purposes and engaging with stories about survivors and victims. And Juliana, as a survivor of October 7th, I would like to personally thank you for going and visiting Israel and visiting the sites and really taking the time to understand what happened on that day. Juliana, you've dedicated much of your life to amplifying the voices of persecuted Christians and minorities in the Middle East. How do you see religious freedom being affected by the political situation in Iran, especially for Assyrian Christians?
Mm-hmm. Natalie, thank you so much. It's an honor to be here and to share the panel with these distinguished colleagues. The Assyrian history, I don't know how many of your audience know who the Assyrians are. Assyrians, our ancestral homeland is northern Iraq, southern Turkey. But since the fall of Nineveh in 612 before Christ, we began settling in northwestern Iran, northeast Syria, continued living in southeast Turkey, and also northern Iraq. In terms of my own history in Iran, my ancestors have been in Iran for at least 2 centuries. And my parents were born in Russia because during the Armenian, Assyrian, Greek genocide by the Ottomans and the Kurds, my grandparents fled to Russia, and that's why my parents were born in Russia, in Soviet Union, I should say. But then in 1937, the women and the mothers were sent back to Iran because of their former citizenship, and this is why I was born in Iran. Today I must tell you that we only have about 3 to 4,000 Assyrian Christians left in Iran. When I was there in the 1980s, we had at least 40 to 50,000. And this massive drop is because of religious persecution, religious harassment. In my own case, for example, I was told that I would burn in hell at school because of my Christian name. When my Jewish friend and I would walk down the street, my neighbors that we lived close to and we had relationships with for so many years, they started spitting on the ground because we were Christian, because we were Jewish. But this was nothing new. I must tell you that when my mother came with my grandmother into Iran in 1938. During Ramadan, they would the Muslim neighbors would squash um, tomatoes and they would pour them in front of Christian homes. And they would say, if you dare to come out of your home during Ramadan, your skulls will be squished like this. So this was way before 1979, right? But during the King of Iran, during Shah, my siblings experienced a very good life. They had religious freedom, they had freedom of expression, but I grew up in the midst of the revolution, and I was forced to wear the scarf and maqna'eh at school. So and I was really harassed. I would be thrown out of classes because I would defend my faith, my Christian faith. And my parents repeatedly went to the Ministry of Education trying to advocate for me, but they said, you really don't have a case here. So finally, in 1989, my father paid $25,000 to a smuggler, and they smuggled me out of Iran into Switzerland and into Germany. But my story, my family story, is just a part of a larger story, as you hear, within Iran and within the greater Middle East. And I think, if you don't mind, I'm going to spend a bit of time to talk about historically, and my puppy is asking for my attention right now. Historically, what has jihad looked like, and when Khomeini adapted this? Just really briefly, the Islamic Jihad in the 20th century really started with Hassan al-Banna in Egypt, who was the founder of Muslim Brotherhood. And it's important to mention that Khomeini studied with the Brotherhood, and he translated books of Qutb, Said Qutb, into Farsi. And when we view the situation in Iran, and we're speaking about the Jewish situation here, we cannot ignore the cause of Islamic jihad. I'm sorry, if you don't mind, I'll just grab him for 1 second and then he will be quiet. But this is the joy of working from home, right? Since COVID. Thank you for your patience.
Of course.
So with what happened with the Holocaust and what happened with October 7th, I must mention this. That is something that has happened in the soul. And when I witnessed the massacres or when we heard about the massacres on October 7th, I remembered what Churchill famously said in 1941, that we're in the presence of a crime without a name. But why did that transpire? It transpired because of the Islamic Republic of Iran. And we have to remove ourselves and view the entire situation from 30,000 feet above to really track down when the Islamic Jihad happened in the Middle East. What did Hajj Amin al-Husseini, for example, the Mufti of Jerusalem, went to Iraq and caused the 1941 Farhud in Iraq, where 600 Jews were killed, where thousands were injured, and that began the decimation of the Jewish presence in Iraq. Now we have maybe 4 Jewish people left in Iraq who are living in disguise, and the same in Iran. I mean, we see the Zoroastrians are under oppression. The Baha'is are under oppression. And for example, we do have religious freedom on the books in Iran, but there is a difference between cradle Christians and the people that are converting to Christianity. We, as cradle Christians, meaning we are born into the faith, we're baptized as infants, we are left alone, treated as second-class citizens. Honestly, we're not treated well, but we're able to go attend our churches, but our churches are absolutely monitored. Every message that comes from the church, from the pulpit, is monitored. But the ones that convert to Christianity, they are arrested. The pastors who convert them, they're arrested, imprisoned. So this is not only a religious freedom issue, this is a human rights issue. But in order for us to really advocate in an educated way, we have to look at the history of where it all began in order for us to really take the right steps in combating this evil that is spreading across the world. I think Islamic Republic of Iran has been very successful in exporting their revolution, like Khomeini had vowed in 1979 to 4 corners of the world. But I can go on and talk about this, but I'll cut it short here. Otherwise, there's so much to talk about.
Well, if we have time at the end, we could definitely have you add more, or if you have anything to comment on the other speakers. But it is true. We're seeing, especially now, I think in the United States, we're seeing a pattern in what happened in Iran during the revolution and how they really infiltrated the minds of the students and the minds of the future and kind of tricked them into thinking that they were being offered a better future when they weren't. And a lot of people who took part in that revolution and helped Khomeini come to power today regret it incredibly. And it's very unfortunate that we're seeing that in the United States. We're seeing a lot of these students being brainwashed. And I think one day in the future, they'll look back and regret that they took part in certain protests. But hopefully, America doesn't end up in that same place that Iran has ended up in today. And hopefully we see Iran go back to what it was before the revolution. So I just want to say thank you so much, Juliana, for all of your insight. And now we are going to go to our next speaker, Farnam Nekui. Farnam is a former political prisoner in Iran, political advocate, and president of the Formation of the United Iranians in Hamburg, Germany. As a vocal critic of the Iranian regime, Farnam has long been advocating for democracy and human rights, with a particular focus on the plight of political prisoners and dissidents under the Islamic Republic. Farnam, having endured political imprisonment and now advocating for a united Iranian front abroad, how do you think political freedom and the right to speak out play a big role in fighting for freedom of religion in the country?
Hello, everyone. And Natalie, thank you so much for having me. We are here in exile, but we are living in Europe, a free world, where we have political freedom. We are even free to choose our religion. However, our activities here do not help the people inside Iran in terms of religious freedom, because under the Islamic Republic, you must be Muslim and Shia. If you choose another religion, you will be killed. Let me tell you about the past. As you know, before the Islamic Revolution in Iran, during the reign of Reza Shah I and later Muhammad Reza Shah Pahlavi, the people of Iran, regardless of their religion or beliefs, lived alongside one another. People of different faiths were active in various sectors, including education, politics, the military, healthcare, and more. One person was Jewish and held a seat in the Senate. Another was Baha'i and served in an important military position. Another was Zoroastrian and was part of the prime minister cabinet. Then suddenly, 46 years ago, within a few months and with the help of Western countries, the regime in Iran changed, and they call it the Islamic Republic. The situation became difficult for all Iranians who were not Muslim and Shia, but it was even harder for Iranian Jews. The Islamic Republic, under the leadership of Khomeini and later Khamenei, forced Iranian Jews to leave their temples after centuries and go into forced exile. The Islamic Republic did not stop there. Unfortunately, I'm from a generation that read about the first Holocaust in history books and saw the second Holocaust with my own eyes. We all know who did the first Holocaust. The question is who planned, financed, and militarized the second Holocaust in October 7th. It wouldn't be wrong to mention the terrorist and proxy groups of the Ayatollah's regime, as they are under the command of a dictator named Ali Khamenei. The answer is the anti-Semitic ideology that has occupied the Iran for 46 years and has taken 85 million Iranians as hostages. For example, you can see the famous video of the former president of the Islamic Republic regime, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, on YouTube, where he says that Israel must be wiped off the map. Not long ago, the world saw that Israel, in response to Hezbollah in Lebanon, blew up all the pagers of this terrorist group. And the pager of the ambassador of the Islamic Republic regime in Beirut also exploded. And the ambassador lost an eye. Question: why does the ambassador of one country have the pager of another country's terrorist group? What evidence do superpower countries need to call the IRGC and the entire regime occupying Iran as terrorists? When will America and Europe stand by the people of Iran and Israel and finish Islamic Republic once for all? My dear friends, if tomorrow morning the first news in the world is the complete destruction of the terrorist and proxy forces of the Islamic Republic by the Israeli army, do you think Israel, the Middle East, and the world will be safe and at peace forever? No, the world will not be at peace until the Ayatollah regime in Iran is overthrown. And the only credible alternative and legitimate heir to the Iranian throne, the Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi, returns to Iran and eliminates anti-Semitic ideology from the region with his strategic actions. That day will come soon, and you, my dear friends, will see that after the transition, by holding a democratic referendum, the majority of the Iranian people's vote is for a constitutional monarchy, because my people are calling for it on the street of Iran. As an Iranian who is political activist against the regime of the Islamic Republic, I have a message to the people, the army, and the Prime Minister of Israel, Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu. Help us send our common enemy, the Islamic Republic, to garbage of history once and for all, and establish a legacy of stability and peace. To the US and Europe leaders, our nation knows well that regime change in Iran is only possible by their own hands. But let's achieve maximum support for people of Iran by not dealing with brutal Islamic Republic regime and its proxies. Thank you so much, Natalie.
Thank you so much, Farnam. And I want to say, as someone who's obviously part of the Iranian Jewish diaspora, um, you know, unlike a lot of other Jewish groups who had to move around a lot because of persecution and who don't feel a very close tie to the lands that they kept moving from, because they weren't there for a long time, the Iranian Jews have something very unique. They were in Iran, they were in what was Persia since the first exile from Judea. And a lot of Iranian Jews can trace their ancestry all the way back to Queen Esther. And me, myself, I recently did 23andMe and I got 97% Persian. And I always say that I'm in this very unique place where for so many years, my ancestors that were in Iran wished to go back to Israel and live freely in Israel. And I find myself in an opposite position where I can live freely in Israel, but I wish to go back to Iran and I wish to see the beauty that my father and my grandmother speak about and that all of my cousins speak about. And I really hope that day comes soon because once we really did all live in peace for many, many years. And
Amen.
it's a beautiful thing to see. And I really hope everything you said right now comes true in our lifetime and that we get to see this happen. And we get to see all of your efforts really come to fruition because Farnham, you've done so much for the Iranian people in the diaspora and you really fight so hard. And it's really amazing to see everything you've done. So I want to say thank you again to all of you for joining and for doing everything that you do. And next, we have our upcoming speaker, Elahe Jamali. Elahe is a British Iranian human rights activist who has consistently challenged the policies of the Islamic Republic of Iran, particularly in her activism for human rights against anti Semitism. Despite facing significant personal risks, Elahe has led the Women Life Freedom marches, pushing for a feminist revolution within Iran. She remains in hiding today due to the ongoing threats against her. Elahe, as a leader of the Women Life Freedom movement and a vocal advocate for the Iranian woman, how do you think gender equality and religious freedom are connected in today's Iran?
First of all, thank you so much for having me here. And hello and durud to everyone who's, oh my God, you're a esteemed guest. Incredible lineup. I feel so honored. And you're always doing me, I don't know if it's justice because it's too much. Don't say leader. I'm one of the girls who's always at the march, you know. um, religious. Religious freedom and women in Iran. One of the number one things we have to focus on is the fact that the Islamic Republic used religion precisely to start a gender apartheid, using the chador as a hiding space for hiding and imprisoning half of the society, and that was one physical act of their sort of attack on women and the separation and the segregation of men and women from society, whereas how so brightly all of your previous guests had stated for us during the Pahlavi era, we had a period of enlightenment and lightness for the Iranian women where they could fully contribute to the society, be high-profile members of society, hold high-profile jobs alongside the men because the Iranian man, regardless of their religion, or their ideological belief, they always respected the Iranian woman. And then comes the Islamic Republic exactly 46 years ago yesterday, and doom fell upon us. Since then, we've had genocide after genocide, religious-based genocide at the hands of this regime. For example, not so long ago, I think it was a few months ago, where there was again fires in northern jungles of Iran, where the Baha'i community have been pushed out of the cities, out of civilization. They have to live in hiding in the jungles. And even in the jungles, they're not in safety, where the regime agents, IRGC, I don't want to insult demons and animals by even calling them such things, because these are people with terrible choices. They're choosing to be murderers. They're choosing to commit acts of genocide against my people, and they're doing it all under the guise of religious superiority and religious sort of second classism. And in one part of the entire country, you have half of women, half of the society, which is the entirety of women, put in one box of religious inferiority, where their rights are halved. For example, whether it's to do with their inheritance, their right for seeking divorce, or even have a single woman needs to have a male chaperone from their family in order to do any sort of legal based on Sharia law. They will have to have all kinds of restrictions put on them just based on their gender and their sex. On top of that, we have all of these religious minorities that are going through persecutions, punishments, and as far as genocides, like the Jewish community and the Jewish community in Iran, that's a bit of a different story, because Iranians culturally have always embraced the Jewish other Iranian sort of counterparts. It's never been an issue. Only since the 1979 doom of the Islamic Republic's revolution, we've had such unbelievable radical ideas against Israel, while still embracing Jewish culture and Jewish religion in Iran. So luckily, we still have some sort of safety for a lot of our Jewish Persian community inside of Iran, but still with a lot of precaution. They're forced to, for example, go against everything. It's a golden cage. I mean, Iran is a golden cage for all of us, regardless of our religion. But the religious crimes that they're committing against other branches of religion inside of Iran is just despicable, mostly against the apostates, whichever religion one should choose, whether it's a Muslim turning into Christianity, Islam, Judaism, or Zoroastrianism, or flat out atheism. They are automatically put into the Muharabe or Kafar bracket, and they are punishable by death. So we have all kinds of I just splattered all kinds of things everywhere there for you. Let's see how to wrap this up. I apologize there. I just suddenly had a buffering of all kinds of information that I went through and what I talk about your question. If you would like to kindly enlighten me with your question again, I would wrap this up.
So basically, overall, the question was, how you see that the movement and vocal advocate, as a vocal advocate for Iranian women, how do you think gender equality and religious freedom are connected in today's Iran? And how do you see that they kind of use both, I guess, against women, but also against people of the minority religions in general?
So gender equality does not exist in Iran, period, regardless of religion. However, women of other religions other than Islam would be subject to even more scrutiny than Muslim women. Regardless of religion, however, women are always subject to more discrimination, more scrutiny just for existing in their form. So religious gender apartheid is there, and it's always going to be there for as long as the Islamic Republic exists.
I think it is also very important to point out the fact that a lot of the hate crimes that the Islamic Republic and their proxies have done against other religions, you see a focus on hurting the woman of those societies, especially, let's say, in Israel, you saw the focus in the rape of the woman because they know how much those religions really respect the woman in their
Absolutely.
cultures. And they knew it was a way to hurt that culture and that religion even more and that society even more by really focusing on attacking their woman.
Yes,
Yeah,
no,
so
absolutely.
you
On
really
that
see like,
issue, then in that, for example, the Islamic Republic, before executing young girls who haven't been sexually active yet, they forced them, first of all, regardless of their religion, into converting to Islam, and then forcing them into an Islamic marriage where they are raped before they are executed. And then there is also the entire atrocity, the pattern and the action that was taken by Hamas during October 7 and onwards, and through the tortures that they put their hostages through. That is all religious misogyny. It's entirely to do with weaponizing the woman's body against her and making a non-Muslim woman so much more inferior that the rape is the best punishment they could give them. I mean, the dehumanization of a non-Muslim woman is huge in the Islamic culture. I mean, if you look at the conversion system that has historically taken place through Islam, wherever the Islamic troops entered, the women were taken into hostage and raped into marriage and then forced pregnancies, while the men were slaughtered to death. So it speaks for itself historically and even in 2025. It's an
yeah,
attack on women.
it's very unfortunate and it's very
I mean,
sad to see.
for simply having a few strands of her hair out. Islam is an attack on women, and just saying that alone is now considered blasphemous and anti-Islamic and Islamophobic, and could have me arrested in the UK now. I mean, the influence is reached so high that even in the Parliament of the UK, they're planning on creating blasphemy laws for religious minorities, where there are already laws protecting religious minorities in the UK. But these blasphemy laws are only coming to protect Islamist extremists, and under a very broad explanation of Islamophobia. The Islamic Republic and their echoes of their ruling is now all over the world in the West. It's after October 7th, we are now seeing its fruition in the Western parliaments. It's
And
terrifying, but
as
doing our
someone who I
best
can
to.
see, I can see even through your nails that you're very supportive of the Jewish people and the Iranian people together, and you always are very proud and show your support. And do you feel fearful at all for your future in Europe? Do you think that you see yourself continuing to have a future there with all these laws that you say are taking place to protect the Islamic extremists?
Because of my loyalty to the UK, due to the past 25 years, I mean a quarter of century, this country has generously given on. And to see the very people who pushed me into exile come over here and take over and invade and put in danger the freedom and personal autonomy of the British nation, as well as what they've done to Iran and what they're doing to the Middle East. I find it to be it's my duty to now fight for the safety of the UK, as while I was fighting for the UK to prescribe, for example, IRGC into the terrorist group during the mass arming during the Women Life Freedom Revolution in the first year, I wasn't only asking them to cut their ties with Iran so that the Islamic Republic doesn't have access to Western money. It was also so that the indoctrination that takes place here by the IRGC active agents and the think tanks that they create here through prestigious outlets would be stopped, because it's affecting the future of the UK. 3 years on, here we are with blasphemy laws protecting extremist Islamists. So now my fight is tripled. It is not just for the emancipation of Iranian women from the Islamic Republic and the downfall of the Islamic Republic. It is not just anti-terrorism in the West and fighting anti-Semitism and fighting for the people of Israel. It is now also fighting for the liberation of the UK from this Islamic virus. And it is literally that. So good luck to us, huh?
It's crazy to see how far their tentacles have spread. I mean, look at all of us. We're all part of the Iranian diaspora, and we're all in Europe or the United States or partially in Israel. And somehow we've all managed to run away from the Islamic regimes in Iran, and somehow we're still fighting this fight once again on our own ground, on this new home that we've taken for ourselves. And we're not only fighting it for us, we're also fighting it for the people that we've left behind in Iran. And it's really crazy to see how far they've managed to spread their
Let you go, because I know I've been taking quite some time. Today, 11th of February 2025, His Royal Highness Crown Prince of Iran, Reza Pahlavi, was supposed to speak at the Cambridge Union for the university student and talk to them about the future of Iran without the Islamic Republic. That talk was cancelled under the disguise of security issues. But we all know the very Islamist Marxist alliance that is at play here has caused a shutdown of conversation one more time in European soil. So when someone like Reza Pahlavi is cancelled on here, it is only natural that we see the ripple effects that it's had in Europe, but he's going to be speaking, luckily for us, in the Munich Security Council and in Switzerland, where I'm going to see him shout out at the UN summit. So I'm going to raise a few challenges to the UN women. Why did they do so little for Israeli women? Why are they doing so little for Iranian women? And all kinds of things. Stay tuned, huh?
Well, first of all, I'm very jealous that you get to see him. And I can't wait to see it, hopefully, once it's posted, once he's done speaking. But I really want to thank all of you for being here today. And also, before I give my closing statement, if any of the speakers have anything that they want to comment on what another speaker said,
Natalie, if I may say something, I made my speech very short. I didn't know about the time. I was the first person speaking. I just want to say that when the revolution had happened, Iran's population was 35 million, and around 100,000 Jews lived there, vibrant members of society. 46 years later today, I don't know the exact number, the Jewish community may be between 5 and 8,000 among a population of 90 million. So as we know, the majority of Iranians are very young, and there's a big difference between the elderly leadership and the young population, who majority of them yearn for democracy and freedom. I consider myself in a unique position because I fully grew up in imperial Iran. I was 18 when the revolution happened, and then I lived through the revolutionary Iran, and for 8 years in the Islamic Republic of Iran as a Jewish woman, when the line between anti-Semitism and Zionism has often been blurred. And I talked about hijab, but I experienced the difference between pre and post-revolutionary Iran when I lived there. and of course, at that time, there was the Iran-Iraq war happening. I lived through all that. The new regime had the Quds Day. The last Friday of the month of Ramadan is the Quds Day. Quds is Jerusalem in Arabic, where they demonstrate against Israel. I lived through all that. And the impetus for my leaving of Iran, it was in 1987. For 8 years, I wore the hijab. I was in the Islamic Republic. Is when my daughter, at the age of 6, entered first grade, and she started wearing the hijab. But hijab was just a cloth at that time for me. It was more her being indoctrinated into fundamentalist Islamic ideology, and she was literally being brainwashed at the age of 6. So I don't want to go on, but I just want to say everybody's talk was amazing, and I'm very honored to be part of this panel. Thank you.
Well, we're very honored to have you. Thank you so much, Jacqueline. And I do have one final question, I guess, for all the panelists, if anyone, if you guys want to take turns answering, or if one person wants to answer. But in regards to the future of Iran, and with the revolution, what do we see in the future? Like, what are the hopes that we see? For example, are there different political movements that currently defy the Islamic Republic, and do we see any of them as a possible future for Iran? Because I have heard from the Pahlavi family, they are in very close relations with the Jewish community here in the United States, in New York and in LA. And they have mentioned that they wouldn't necessarily want to come back to rule Iran in a democracy, but they would help whoever would be willing to come and kind of be the new leader of Iran. So do you guys see any specific political movements that seem to have more of a grasp on possibly taking that next step?
We'll see who wants to take this.
Does anyone have any insight in regards to, like, if there's any specific person or movement that might kind of be able to take the next step once we finally get rid of the Islamic regime of Iran?
I know there are okay. I can't see the I can't see the group of screen. So sorry if I just talked over anyone. Whoever wants to speak, please go on, and then I will have an input.
I was going to thank you so much, Elijah. I was going to say that although the Zoroastrians in Iran have dwindled in numbers to maybe under 25,000, any poll that is taken in Iran, and there was a poll taken in 2020, where 8% of the population claims to be Zoroastrians, meaning that they may not be formally Zoroastrians, but they hearken to their ancient past, where Zoroastrianism, the religion under the Achaemenians and the Sasanians, was prevalent. And I'm hopeful that those people who claim to be Zoroastrians are not formally Zoroastrians. If Iran were ever to become free again, you will see a sizable proportion of the population declaring themselves to be Zoroastrians again. That's my fervent hope. My ancestors left Iran in the 8th and 9th centuries, survived in India and so forth. But I very much look forward to the circling of the diaspora going back to Iran eventually for our own faith. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kirsty. And Elahed, did you want to add something?
Sure. I was just going to say, while Reza, as his friends call him, RP, is of course openly saying that he's not looking into going and becoming the next king of Iran, which is the most democratic statement he could make, and it's natural. And he's been saying this for 2 decades already, and we accept that. I know that there are groups of Iranians, activists, and professionals who are lawmakers, but for their safety, the ones who are in Iran, we can't really talk about them. But outside of Iran, there is the Qornus, organization. Um, uh, there's the Lotus Foundation. There are different groups that have managed to bring an international group of people from the diaspora. So all Iranians from the diaspora, from oil industry, from scientific backgrounds, finances. So to write and help plan for the first 100 days post revolution, post downfall of the Islamic Republic, which would help and aid the sort of rebuilding and the leadership while the people are coming out of their hiding and sort of assuming their positions. Because at the moment, due to safety reasons, we can't really expose anybody, but it's happening. And hopefully under the leadership of Reza Shah, Reza Pahlavi, His Royal Highness, my dear Crown Prince, this will happen. But if he wants to just be a unifying figure, again, that is also welcome.
I definitely think, even though we all here on this panel come from such different backgrounds and have such different connections in history with the Iranian land, I think we can all agree that we would love to see Reza take part in some way, at least, in the future of Iran. And I really just want to say thank you to all of our incredible speakers for sharing your knowledge, your experiences, and your perspectives with our audience here today. This conversation has really illuminated the urgent issues faced by the people of Iran. And to the audience, thank you for being here and for taking part in this important dialogue. We really encourage you to join the Iranian coalition in our efforts to expose the regime's crimes and amplify the voices of the Iranians and build a stronger tie between our communities, the Iranian community, the Jewish community. And please be sure to follow the coalition through the CAM website, the Combat Anti-Semitism website, and follow all of our social media. We'll be sending out an email with the link of the full recorded event, along with the social media or emails of our speakers if you'd like to reach out to them personally to ask them questions or to ask how you can help with the work that they are doing. And we hope to see you in future events. And thank you once again to everyone for coming and to everyone for speaking.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Natalie.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank
All
you.
the best.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Bye.
And be
Bye.
safe out there. Be safe out there.